That's Debatable is sponsored by MB&G. MB&G is specialists in the esoteric world of vehicle and furniture warranty insurance, delivering quite marvellous customer service, prompt claims payment, and a highly developed understanding of how to deliver these products in a way that is both compliant with the regulations and attractive to customers. To find out more, call Paul Smith, the Managing Director, on 07887 501 441. That's 07887 501 441.
Hello and welcome to That's Debatable, the weekly podcast of the Free Speech Union. And as you'll notice, Connie Shaw isn't here, and I am Jan McVarish. And with me this week is Vinay Kapoor, who is our events officer and also manages something called the Ian McTagot programme. And we're going to come on to Vinay's role within the Free Speech Union later in the podcast. But hi, Vinay. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, how are you?
All right. And we're going to see how this goes. But first of all, we're going to talk about obviously the huge story of the past week, which is the story of Graham Linehan, which I can't imagine any of our listeners haven't heard of. I mean, everybody's heard of this, and it seems so. This is the story whereby Graham Linehan, the comedy writer of Father Ted and the IT Crowd, Black Books, lots of other absolutely brilliant programs, was arrested when he landed from the States at Heathrow Airport by 5 armed police officers. And it's a story that seems to have cut through across all of the news media. It's definitely not something that's only covered by those which you'd expect. And it was headline news on all of the newspapers last week. So a really important story, and may well shift the balance yet again on free speech, so that it becomes something that's undeniably in crisis, and in the UK, and also it gained a huge amount of attention in the States. So it was a massive story for us last week. We obviously immediately kicked into gear and worked out how we could help Graham. Notably, we succeeded really quickly because his bail conditions, he hasn't been charged yet, but his bail conditions were that he couldn't go on X, which is extraordinary. So luckily he's got Substack. So he told the world about it using Substack, which you just kind of think, well, if somebody isn't already plugged into lots of different platforms, how on earth do they let people know what's happened to them? That's extraordinary. Anyway, we've managed to get those bail conditions overturned. So Graham is now back on X. So that's really good. We're then crowdfunding to cover his legal costs should they bring charges. And if they don't, we will concentrate on making a claim for wrongful arrest and for wrongful imprisonment, which is, we make the point on his crowdfunder page. This is really, really important for everybody, because this shouldn't be happening to anybody based on 3 tweets that they've posted on Twitter. And we've now already reached 68% of our crowdfunding target, which is extraordinary. So thank you to those who've donated, and thank you for your patience if you were trying to donate last week and experiencing problems with the interface. I mean, as you can imagine, the volume was just extraordinary, and we had the hamsters behind the scenes that running in the wheels of the website had a few problems with the sheer volume, but that's something that we're hoping to iron out. But hopefully you've all managed to donate now, and it's extraordinary that we could get so far towards the target really, really quickly. So, and you might have seen Toby was on Free Speech Nation last Sunday talking about it. Connie Shaw was on the Spiked podcast last Friday, and Max Thompson, one of our newer colleagues, was on GB News last week as well. So it's great. We've managed to really help to bring this story to the fore, take it to an international audience, and really make something of it. And people might also have noticed in the press that we wheeled out our bright yellow "Police Our Streets, Not Our Tweets" banner again, with our crew of activists, FSU activists, me, Toby, Tom, all the older members of the staff get out there on the street. So we were outside Westminster Magistrates Court last Thursday when Graham arrived, because he was appearing as a what do you call it? He's been accused of harassment and by a trans activist, and so he was appearing to answer to that charge. in Westminster Magistrates Court. There was a big bit of a melee outside, and we were there with our banner, so that was good because that got some attention as well. And we're supporting Graham with that case as well. What's your thoughts on it, Vinay? I'm sure we've all had conversations about this over the last week. So what were your thoughts?
Yeah, I think a lot of the main sources have kind of covered the overlying point. I think it's terrible that, as a matter of principle, I don't think it's about the substance, it's about the principle that no one should be greeted with 5 armed police officers for writing a tweet. As everyone knows, these sorts of things are done for people who've committed or on suspicion of terrorism or murder or actual crimes that actually commit physical harm. So I think that, as a matter of principle, is quite disgusting and abhorrent. And I think the other thing to raise is the debates that I've been thinking about, which is who is actually to blame for this. Who is it? The legislation? Is it because no one can seem to work it out? We actually had quite a surprise reaction from Police Commission. Mark Rowley says, he's going to go talk to the government. Wes Streeting said on the news that we should review the legislation. These sorts of things shouldn't be happening. So the question is, this, I think, in my opinion, this shows what happens when you try and enact arbitrary legislation. Is eventually people will ask themselves these questions of what actually do we do? How do we actually enforce this? And then what you get is things like this happening. So I think it just shows a broader legal flaw in all this that obviously we've been campaigning against and don't think it's good for a flourishing society at all.
Yeah, and until we don't know whether they're going to charge him or what they're going to charge him with yet. He doesn't know that either, which is, I mean, incredible, really, that you're just left in this kind of limbo. And as you say, I mean, I was picturing all these other criminals that must be flowing in through Heathrow all the time, quite happily coming and going back to Marbella or wherever they're going, and they don't get flagged. Graham said that when he went to board the plane in America, he realised that it was something a bit odd because they queried his ticket and said you're going to have to rebook. So he thought that he didn't think this was going to happen, obviously, but he thought something was a bit odd about that. But it also does seem to suggest that we have got a police force that has become an activist police force motivated by one particular cause. And for this degree of disproportionality to occur, it means that they have somehow bought into the idea that Graham is a threat and a threat in the way in which trans activists try to say that Graham is a threat. Because how on earth else could you possibly arrive at the decision-making process whereby you deploy those police officers? I mean, it's just unthinkable unless they've bought into this idea that somehow he's dangerous, and that's, I mean, it's a bit like Lucy Conley in that sense, where there's a kind of acceptance of other people's, with an axe to grind, other people's definitions of what things are, which actually the law should be the thing that stands above everybody's subjective takes on issues and everybody's beefs and the axes they have to grind about particular causes. And the law should be the thing that, as you say, acts on principle and kind of has the cool head and decides whether there's a risk, what's the proportionate response. It is extraordinary. But the good thing is that with somebody like Graham, because he is, I mean, I've got such admiration for him because I do think he has been one of these kind of really important mavericks on an issue where you need people who are prepared to commit 100% to what they believe in, and some people will say obsess on an issue, but I say that you could say that's commitment and conviction and commitment, and then they act on a cause, which, although obviously you can say the other side maybe do that as well, but it's about the methods you then choose. And what Graham has chosen to do is to carry on speaking regardless of the consequences. And there's a kind of sacrificial element to that, which I think people should admire, even if they don't like, or they don't themselves think they would take the approach he takes, use the language he uses. There's a bit of mealy-mouthedness going on at the moment amongst some people, even though they then begrudgingly say, well, of course he shouldn't be shouldn't be arrested. But, I think it's time to sort of recognise the importance of people like him and to just give them the respect. I mean, what do you think about, there does seem to be a bit of a kind of generation gap on issues like this. I mean, certainly we know that with the trans issue. Although having said that, there were some young gender critical feminists outside the court last Thursday as well, who really have been sort of inspired really to speak out by people like Graham, and to sort of say, well, if he can take those consequences, then I can take the consequences on campus of speaking out. So what do you think? I mean, why would somebody think that those tweets are harmful enough such that you would require armed police to deal with it?
Yeah, and that's kind of the thought I was having when you were saying things about the law and harm and who enforces the law. And I think it just links to a more broader nature in arbitrary legislation from a more kind of philosophical point of view about what does harm actually mean beyond conceptualizing harm physically. So if I punch someone, it's kind of obvious I'm hurting them, I'm causing grievous bodily harm or aggravated harm, whatever it is, but I'm actually hurting someone. Whereas this comes back to the debate of whether words can actually hurt, but also more importantly, if words hurt, how can you enforce that? And I think that's the breakdown that we're seeing. And I think most people, who are not tuned into these ideas, think that actually harm can be a discursive thing, and therefore, in theory, it seems quite easy to say, actually, if someone says a mean thing, we should arrest them. Maybe I think most people would think it's a bit too dramatic to have 5 armed police officers come and escort him off a plane. I think that, I think a lot of people, even if they don't like what he said, would accept that that's too much and does seriously show the problems that the FSU's been trying to highlight for the last few years and ever since we've been founded. But at the same time, there might be a point of people saying, well, if you say these things, what do you think is going to happen? In other instances, if you're going to burn a Quran, what do you think would happen to you? If you're going to do this to an activist, what do you think is going to happen to you? But that's not the point. The point is, in a free society, you can basically do what you want. There might be consequences. You might not agree with the person, but things like this are way out of proportion. So I think because we're not actually inquiring into what harm means, we're just going along with it. We're just going along with all these things. And I think most people against progressive ideas, for progressive ideas, just go along with these things because they sound like good things to be favored for, don't actually question that. But the final thing I would say on that is I think this case does show how things actually can go too far. But even if you haven't agreed with what the FSU and what other groups are saying previously, because the staging of that is very, very, very extreme. I think that's the point, is how it was done, who did it, how it happened. That's what, even if you might not agree with someone, you could say at least that's a problem. So it's quite dramatic.
Yeah, I think that's right. And this is, if the state wanted to send a warning to people to not speak their minds, then this would be it, wouldn't it? So whether I don't know that it's intentional, but the fact that we've got to this place where there are warnings being sent out in effect to people who don't have Graham's reach, who don't have Graham's support network, and don't have the capacity to make known what's happening to them. And I think they're right about the idea of harm, where it's become this really flabby concept where, and it bridges between an incredibly subjective idea of people's feelings and how they're made to feel about, or the way they think they're made to feel as a result of some words that they encounter. And then a much more serious sense of harm, like you say, being punched in the face, or, certain ways of writing about a person or speaking about a person that maybe could damage their reputation or something like that. But that's the kind of really weighty end of speech. And I think there's been this elision between the two ends of things. And so people don't really understand the seriousness of the law. So when I spoke to a person in their early 20s about this, and they already knew about it because of social media, and they said, well, he did incite violence. Now, what they mean was he made a reference to violence because in one of his tweets, Graham said, if a woman encounters a trans-identified male in the women's only space, make a fuss, call the police, and if all else fails, punch them in the balls, I think he said, something similar. And because there's a reference to punching somebody, that's sort of taken as if somehow that is incitement to violence. Whereas, of course, we use violent speech all the time. And loads of other people were repeating Graham's tweet, saying it, printing it, posting it in online articles, and we don't say that they're inciting violence by making those words public. So, we need to take seriously words in a way that actually says no, we need to move them into this category, keep them there, and then understand harm in a much more kind of serious way, and understand law and the restrictions on people's freedom in a much more serious way. And I think that I don't blame young people for being quite cavalier about other people's freedoms, because they don't really fully appreciate what it means when the state comes and takes your freedom away.
Yeah.
I think they see the state as more protective. So let's move on to talk about you and talk about how your work at the FSU has kind of developed. So you joined us, over 2 years ago?
August 2023. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. And you were just finished your first year at Warwick University, and you came and took up the post of events officer, working with me on our live events, which has been great. And you had managed to fit in 2 days a week working for us alongside your studies, which is pretty impressive. Not very Gen Z of you. So that's great. And then during the course of your first year with us, I think you then worked with us to set up the Ian McTagot program, which is a funding program for young people's free speech related projects. So tell us a bit, first of all, about what you were doing at university and why free speech is something that you really cared about, such that you did actually apply for the job at the Free Speech Union.
Yeah, so I think during A levels, I was always interested in politics, populism, why are these things happening? And naturally, a lot of culture war discussions, debates came up. So I would say, like many my age actually, who are now involved in this, I was following it from the sidelines. And it was only till I started going to events, I realized, oh, actually, this might be more accessible than I previously thought. So I was thinking about these ideas about free speech, about culture wars, more from an Socratic point of view, not really from like a political position, because I thought a lot of these debates were actually quite stupid and the answer was quite commonsensical. But more, I thought, if we're actually having these discussions, what does that show about the nature of liberal society, the nature of the West more broadly, like from a more deeper and psychological, philosophical point of view? So then I became involved. Then obviously we met other people and graciously became part of the FSU. And then at university as well, I was worried a bit that things would be, the kind of woke nightmare that people portray it to be. It wasn't as bad. We can maybe talk about that after. So yeah, and then I set up a free speech society as well at Warwick called Warwick Speakeasy. So I've always been thinking about these things, but the reason why I do these things is not to win a culture war or to, go after someone. Like, obviously there are problems, and colleagues of ours, friends of ours, all these people have faced genuine problems that are terrible and shouldn't be allowed to happen. But I think the point I try and advocate for is how free speech is actually important at a Socratic level. Even if you strip the politics away, you strip all these things we're talking about, it actually matters for the sake of our own lives, and we risk
What do you
playing with
mean
that.
by a Socratic?
Asking why, doing what Socrates did thousands of years ago, asking the basic question of every human being, saying why, what's the point, inquiring. If we don't do that, then I don't think we can't do anything else.
So you mean that the kind of climate that's arisen around that is hostile to free speech or scared of free speech means that we can't actually ask what are really fundamental questions that would allow us to work out how the world is working.
Yeah, exactly. I think, in an era of self-censorship, and this exists, this is something I definitely noticed on campus in seminars, people just, when controversial things come up, are just like, either they won't show up, or they'll hide to their laptops, and then they'll say something that everyone agrees with. And everyone knows that everyone's not saying what they actually think. Or for me, I would maybe tone myself down a bit. Or if I really knew what I was saying, then I would say it. And I think the problem with that is that really doesn't help if you want to learn. If you actually want to develop your knowledge, that's not going to help. And I really find it rare these days, actually, to find people at university. They exist who actually do that thing of asking why. Most people are just
Mm.
trying to get on with it, which is a bit of a shame.
Yeah. I think that's really interesting because I think what you've always represented is not necessarily the activist. So always there's people that already know what they think and they are motivated to be an activist in the name of a cause. And that's really important that people are doing that. But I think what you represent is a whole other kind of swathe of a generation who are still working out what you think about things, and you probably will always be the people that are continually working out what you think about things, and you need to have the freedom to ask the question and to pose difficult positions. So I mean, I can imagine the sort of seminars, having taught in them, that you just as a lecturer, you just love the student that's prepared to say, well, but what about if? And when people are frightened to say that, you as the lecturer have to then say that point. You say, have you ever thought, oh, what about, don't you think there are people that might argue this? And what you really want is the students to actually be prepared to put themselves in those positions, whether they hold them or not. But as you say, just asking questions has become something that is seen as threatening to the well-being of other students. And it's not just that they're seen as displaying your ignorance that you would ask those questions, but that asking the question in itself isn't seen as somehow aggressive or problematic. And so what you did at Warwick with your Speakeasy Society, which wasn't a campaigning society, was it? It was a well, you just tell us what you did, what it was that you offered.
I had an idea, to be fair, at the beginning of first year, having observed everyone, thought, oh my God, there are some insanely smart people here. If we all got them in the room, what could I learn? It was more from that point of view. Then, after hearing about various projects and the spaces that I ended up getting involved in, including the Free Speech Union, I realized there is an appetite here. There is a group of people trying to fix this problem. And when I mean fix this problem, it wasn't let's go take on the woke, let's go and destroy them. Because the thing is even if you approach it like that, I really think that's the worst way to market to someone at a university. Especially if, oh, it's so bad that everyone's woke, then that means that you're not going to appeal to anyone. So we tried to tone it down, make it more Socratic, as I said, in line with those principles, having open debate, having open discussion, genuinely in a good faith way, but also not being afraid to ask questions that might risk offending someone. And again, that's not provocative. That's just because you need to risk offending in order to think, as Jordan Peterson said, and I think he put that really well. So we set it up end of first year. It went into course at the beginning of second year. In second year, we hosted a lot of speakers. We hosted a lot of debates. We hosted Stella Assange, who was Julian Assange's wife. At the time of the event, he had just gone on trial that nearly finished. So we managed to get her a few months before the decision was overturned. We had Tomiwa Olade, we had Nina Powell. We had a very diverse range of speakers. We collabed with the Vegan Society. We collabed with the GSD Society. So we debated. We didn't be like, we're going to go and debate the vegans. No, we actually had a really good discussion about a policy that they enacted that actually made national headlines because people didn't agree with it. Then in third year, last year, I had a bigger exec from a much more diverse range of opinions. I think that's important to highlight. We didn't just pick conservatives. Like, we picked people who were working in the SU, people who are one thing on one thing, but another thing on another thing, like actually getting to grips with what actual debate means. And we were lucky to have people like Dominic Cummings come in January. We had Vince Cable, we had Peter Tatchell. So again, diversity of opinion was what we really stood for. And I'm really grateful that it has succeeded me. I'm now finished at university. I graduated in July, but it's continued on with another exec, I think of 10. Two of my friends are continuing it. And hopefully, having seen the new exec, it should continue even more. So we're trying to create a legacy where we can have Warwick's version of the Oxford Union. That's our end goal.
And how did you set the tone then? How did you make it clear to people what the norms of Speakeasy were that they weren't entitled to get offended? How did you have to do that explicitly in the way you ran events, or was it possible to kind of just emanate that from the way you guys were?
I think it's the latter. I think it was more implied. I mean, we had a statement of values and we thought really hard about every single word in there and what exactly it would try to put across. Then I think in our events, you could see that we were willing to have open discussion. I think one example that proved that was when we had Nina Power. That caused a bit of pushback, even though I kind of didn't expect it to, but then realized because she's gender critical, it is going to push back. I invited her to talk about masculinity and feminism, which was her latest book at the time. And because of the kind of controversy surrounding it, we actually had a really good discussion for the people who actually wanted to be there. I remember there was one girl who completely opposed what she was saying about uh, women, and kind of she was making a point about modesty and how that might actually help women. And this one girl completely came after her, like very very progressive. But again, because we had that debate, I thought actually, what, the girl might actually have a point. Whereas if we just, thought, oh my God, this is too risky to have, this might offend someone, then we're not going to do that. And I think I would say we proved that time and time again, because you had events like that, then you had Assange, then you had Cummings, which everyone's interested, but then Vince Cable the next week, Nigel Bigger one week, his critic, the other week, I forgot his name, Alan Lester, sorry. So I think and then you look back and you think, okay, we've done all this. And I think therefore people go, okay, they actually want to debate. And last thing to say is our exec is very diverse in opinion and diverse in the other diverse that everyone likes to talk about, but I don't think it's actually that important. The other DEI. And I think we didn't make an effort to go, we need to recruit this minority, this gender, this thing. But because we were open and good faith, we got all of that anyway, even though it wasn't our fundamental goal that we aspired to achieve. So that's how,
Yeah, which is great, because what you then do is you prove that there is an audience for this approach. Well, not just an audience, but there's a demand for participation in it, and that cuts across all the groupings that otherwise people tend to be able to caricature their opponents as somehow being, there's the people that benefit from DEI, and then there's the people that oppose DEI, whereas actually you kind of want to move away from the DEI approach and just get on with having a room of interesting individuals. And if they are properly diverse, that actually does tend to make it very interesting, especially in a university where you've got people coming from all over the place, all over the world, and from lots of different sectors of British society. So it's great. And so that really, I think that's what alerted us in many ways to the possibility of launching this Ian McTagot programme, which has been going now for 2 years. Is it 2 years in the spring?
Just over.
Sorry?
I said just over 2.
Just over 2 years. So we've got some very, very supportive funders who wanted to do the FSU to set up some work with young people at universities. And we thought what would be best is to try to encourage what's already going on, and so that it does, rather than trying to impose something on students, which from experience I don't think works, actually try and work with and encourage those who are already motivated to get people together, to have conversations, to hear from diverse speakers, and to support what they're doing, but also to encourage them to adopt a certain set of standards around free speech and allowing a range of opinions and not throwing other people under the bus if you don't agree with them. So tell us a little bit about the Ian McTagot programme.
Yeah, so it's been going for over 2 years just, and we're very grateful for the opportunity to be able to administer this on such a big, now I would say on a much bigger scale, and able to really support societies in a way that doesn't mean that we're on them all the time and imposing our views on them. We really don't want to be doing that, and I don't think they would want that either. So as you said, Jan, our aim is to take a hands-off approach, but also ensure that free speech is being conducted in a apolitical, Socratic way on campus. So what we do is we help 3 groups of people, usually student societies, academics, and individuals. And people can go to our website. If you go to Free Speech Union and you go to apply for a grant, you can see showcases there, more information about the program there. So we've supported existing societies such as the Durham Union, York Dialectic Union. We've also supported newer societies like Warwick Speakeasy, and also societies that have free speech as a kind of, you would say, given aim, but might be more diverse in their approach. So we've tried to reach out, be more diverse in our approach. So we've supported law societies, we've supported a society at Durham called Durham Women in Politics Society, is another startup society that aims to get women more involved in politics in a way that allows them to go to some insane places, such as Parliament, to the Foreign Office. So they were very, and again, they did that all themselves. We didn't organize any of this. They came to us and said, "This is what we're planning to do." And then we said, "Oh my God, this is exactly the kind of thing we want to support." We've supported students who are in sixth form, podcasts, people who've made their own podcasts, interviewed people like McTagot, Anthony Scaramucci, who used to work for Trump. These people who are thinking. We're trying to identify people who are thinking and are intelligent and show potential, and give them the opportunity to do something with that. Yeah, give them opportunities, such as what we're trying to do. Finally, we've supported conferences from academics who are trying to organize things on their own campuses, as well. So yeah, it's very flexible. It's a very flexible program.
Yeah, and when people apply, we're able to assess. You and I can assess their applications really, really quickly, which is unusual for usual funding programs, which are kind of tortuously slow. And then we also, if they need help, if they run into any problems with students' union or other kinds of obstacles are placed in their way, we can help them with the usual style of Free Speech Union advice from our case team. And then sometimes going as far as to say fund security if that's being placed on them as a requirement by Students' Union. All these kinds of different ways in which we can just really try to encourage as much as we can a flourishing of a more open and free speechy culture amongst young people. And it's not exclusively students either, is it? So we will consider applications from people, but they definitely have to be in their 20s. So it is about this kind of cultivating amongst a much younger audience a presence for the FSU and a kind of respect and understanding of free speech values amongst that generation. So it's going really well, isn't it? And we're getting more and more varied applications in from people. Word gets around. It's usually word of mouth, I suspect, where one society tells another.
Yeah.
And it's everything from helping them fund room hire, podcasting equipment. Pizza seems to occur quite a lot as the lure with which you draw in students, maybe alcohol as well. We're not averse to providing alcohol. I think we provided some cocktail glasses for one society or something like that.
Yeah.
Anything like that is completely fine. But then also on the serious end of things is to really help work with them if obstacles are placed in their way. So yeah, all really, really positive. And then you're now that you've graduated with a first class degree, you're now working for the Free Speech Union for the next period of time, and you've got plans to try to further expand what we do to reach younger people. So what kind of things are you thinking of doing?
At the moment, what we're thinking of doing is actually going to universities, because I think that's quite important, and using the contacts that we have to make more awareness about the Free Speech Union in a way that's approachable, socratic, and shows to young people that we actually want to help with free speech. This is why we exist. Free speech is actually for everyone, even though we've known that. I think our critics will say things against us that we don't believe are true at all. Genuinely, free speech is for everyone, and I think we don't want to go and tell people that. We want to show it through the events that we go to. So we're thinking of going to various universities. And the other thing I'm thinking about is putting on more events for young people. So doing events that are specifically young facing that, might be about politics, but also more broadly use free speech, because, not to play victim games, because I'm not trying to, but, to being a young person in 2025, I think a lot of people find that quite a existential minefield, especially given, the Linehan case, all the cases that people talk about in the news about Gen Z, all the books that are written about the anxious generation, the quote, the snowflakes. And I think we want to get to grips with what that actually means, therefore, for young people in the future, in the world that exists today, economically, geopolitically, and so forth. So doing more events that young people focused. And finally, I think understanding what young people actually think, because I think in our space, there's so much talk about, if you ask someone, what's the average young person? Oh, they're they're woke, progressive, they support this, and they probably think they're like a whale or something. Obviously, that's a caricature, but the idea is very kind of closed-minded, I think, to what young people are. But if you actually meet the young people, in quotes, I think we're very diverse and different and thinking about different things. And I think we want to talk to those people because that's what free speech actually is. So I think it's taking the ethic that I've spoken about for the whole podcast and now trying to see if, as the FSU, we can gear more towards that.
Yeah, and our events. I mean, our natural audience, if you like, or natural membership kind of profile is people who are a bit older because they've got an instinctive understanding of free speech and they can't quite believe that it's been eroded, which is brilliant. And that is the force and the power of the Free Speech Union and the membership. But what that means is that we need a kind of distinct approach when we're trying to reach younger people, because younger people's tastes are different. Obviously, I mean, I don't socialise with people in their early 20s, particularly, unless I'm, you take me out salsa dancing with the rest of the Free Speech Union, which might happen soon.
Yeah.
People don't tend to cut across generational categories, and that applies to events as well. So I think there's really nice things that can be done with the style of events, the kind of way they're run, which we did a really nice event at the Hippodrome, which lots of people will have been to for our regular events. We did this kind of experimental event more aimed at London students, and we made it interactive. We had voting going on, free bar as luring people in, and there's lots of ways in which you're going to be trying to experiment with building a bit more of a kind of scene, really, for young people to come and find each other. People who want to, they don't have to agree with each other. They just need to be prepared to come and hang out together and ask the questions, as you say. Great. So I just wanted to give a plug for some of the events. I know Connie and Celeste mentioned our big event last week, which is great. Very grateful to them for doing that. So this is the event on Saturday, October the 4th, which is it's the book launch of a book called The War on Science. And it's a very, it's literally a big book, and it's also a big book in terms of the story that it represents. So it's been edited by Lawrence M. Krauss, who is a scientist, and I noticed he's got like 450,000 followers on Twitter. Lots of people will know who Lawrence is. But the people he's brought together, I think it's 29 different authors have written essays for this book, including Steven Pinker, Richard Dawkins, lots of other really big names. And we're really, really delighted that Richard Dawkins has agreed to come to our event and be one of the speakers and to sign books, along with Lawrence Krauss, the editor, and then with some familiar British names. Alice Sullivan, Professor Alice Sullivan, who lots of people know who are tuned into the gender critical scene. Alice is an academic at UCL and has done really, really great work on statistics and trying to retain the integrity of government statistics after it was being undermined by the kind of blurring of sex and gender. So she's done really important work. John Armstrong, who's actually Alice's husband, who is a professor, I think, of mathematics at King's, and he similarly has done a lot to try to preserve and make the case for proper scientific method in the statistical world. We've also got Alan Sokal, who is American, but lots of people, he's been over here for years, and a lot of people will have already seen him speak at our events. An eminent mathematician who was responsible for something called the Sokal hoax, which was one of the very, very early challenges to postmodern relativistic thinking in the sciences, where he published a spoof article in an academic journal that was basically testing the integrity and limits of more postmodernist academia. And Amy Wax, who is a legal scholar from the States and also a neurologist, who is very controversial but is going to be in the UK at the same time. So she's also a contributor to the book and people had made many attempts to cancel Amy Wax. So a lot of these people have had cancellation campaigns directed towards them, and luckily most of them have survived. But the idea of the book is to give those people a platform to speak out about the way in which they've been attacked. But also, it's not a personal book. It's about the kind of bigger lessons that need to be learnt and the pushback that needs to happen to defend science and academic life and open inquiry in the face of these kinds of onslaughts. So it will be really good. It's taking place in the Emmanuel Centre, which is a lovely, lovely venue in the heart of Westminster. It's a early Saturday evening, so it starts at 5:30. Doors open at 5. Come along. You could meet hundreds of other Free Speech Union members and other people who are interested in this issue. And we'll start with a panel discussion amongst the contributors. And then we will go into a book signing, so people can get their book signed by any or all of the authors. And we'll also have a drinks reception, so people can hang out for another hour and a half or so and meet people, which is just, as you know, what you did at Warwick. It's just a great opportunity to do this. Our events are much more sociable than other public debates, I find, because we just try to build in that opportunity for people to actually mingle and meet each other. So that is Saturday, the 4th of October. If you go to the events page of our website, you can then get through for tickets. Tickets start at £22 for members, and that's for the whole event. It's for the drinks part of it. You can buy another ticket which gets you a discounted book, so really good value for what's on offer for the evening and the number of speakers you've got and the profile of them. So do come along to that. Bring your friends. Members are entitled to a discounted rate if you use the promotional code that's in the newsletter, the FSU newsletter, or in emails that come out from me at FSU events. Then you will be able to get an additional discount on tickets. So do that. In fact, no, there isn't a promo code. You just need to go for the members option. I'm getting confused with the next thing I wanted to talk about, which is the Battle of Ideas Festival, which lots of people will have gone to before and will have heard about. And that's on the 18th and 19th of October, Saturday and a Sunday. And that's a whole weekend of loads and loads of different sessions, different formats, live podcasts, all kinds of things. A very similar area to where our event's going to be on the 4th in Westminster at Church House. And the Free Speech Union is putting on a debate about Islamophobia, the Islamophobia definition. And that's happening late on Saturday afternoon. I think it starts at 4:45. Toby will be on the panel, as will Nick Timothy, who's been very, very important in the House of Lords pushing on this issue. And we're building our panel at the moment from all the kind of most relevant and intelligent people on this particular issue. So what you'll notice if you go to the festival website is that lots of sessions are described, but they're still adding speakers as we go. So sometimes you'll see one speaker, but if you keep going back to the site for the sessions that you're interested in, you'll gradually see the speakers being added. So it's a great weekend, and you're coming. Lots of our younger staff are going to be there. We're going to have a big stall this year, bigger than ever, right at the top of the stairs as you come in, and so you won't be able to miss us. So come and say hello, and you can have a chat with our staff. We're going to be selling some new merchandise, turning into market traders for the weekend, and flogging, I don't know what it'll be, baseball caps, pens, hoodies, t-shirts, all our range. And so come and pick something up, or just come and have a chat and pick up some leaflets to take away with you to go and spread the word amongst other people. So that there is a promo code for a discounted rate, which is in our newsletter, so to confuse people. But all of this information will go in the show notes, and also it's there on our website. So yeah, you're looking forward to the Battle of Ideas?
Yeah, no, it's going to be good. It's, I think, my third battle. It always comes around so quickly, but as ever, there's a lot to battle about. So, this is the right place to do it. So definitely recommend everyone come, especially if you're young. You could volunteer. But even if you're old, you can volunteer. They're very inclusive on that front. But a lot of the students who are at university or have just graduated or in sixth form go and volunteer. So you can go on Battle of Ideas website and you can see all that there. But it's a great weekend, lots of people, lots of ideas, and lots of battling.
Yeah, I don't envy the organisers trying to keep up with the news at the moment and try to
You're
reflect
right.
all of the current issues
Yeah.
in the festival. And I'm not going to ask you what you mean by old, so we won't pin you down on that one.
Absolutely polite. Yeah.
Obviously, much older than me. Great. All right. Well, thanks, Vinay, for making the time for us, and we will see everybody next week. Thanks, then. Bye bye.